we're going to fight this case with everything we have, as is he, and eventually he's going to be shown to be innocent. And so tomorrow we fight again, and we'll fight every day until we don't have to fight anymore.
With Mark Agnifilo gone, the stakes for Sean "Diddy" Combs' defense team had never been higher. Now, the remaining attorneys had to find a way to keep the case on course amid the mounting pressures, both inside and outside the courtroom. Agnifilo's involvement had underscored the gravity of the case from the start, signaling to everyone that the accusations were anything but trivial. His abrupt departure only amplified the sense that Diddy's defense was facing an uphill battle, and that every strategic decision from this point forward could define not only the outcome of the trial, but Diddy's very future. Meanwhile, legal analyst Bruce Rivers was one of the many experts weighing in on what this meant for Diddy's potential fate. Rivers didn't mince words as he explained just how severe the consequences could be. Given that the case involved federal charges, specifically under the RICO, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act statutes, the stakes went far beyond what many typical celebrity cases entailed. Federal sentencing guidelines in cases involving RICO and trafficking are some of the harshest in the legal system, offering little to no leniency and severe penalties for those convicted. The mere possibility of a life sentence without the chance for parole loomed large over the trial, casting a shadow of urgency on every courtroom strategy and every motion filed. The nature of the RICO charges in particular added an additional layer of complexity for Diddy's defense team. RICO laws, originally designed to dismantle organized crime syndicates, allow prosecutors considerable flexibility in proving their case. It's not always necessary to prove that a defendant personally committed each individual act of wrongdoing. Instead, simply demonstrating a pattern of conspiracy or association with an organized effort is often enough to secure a conviction. In cases like this, where allegations suggest organized wrongdoing, the statute's wide-ranging scope can be a nearly insurmountable challenge for defense attorneys, as it allows prosecutors to build a case that extends beyond isolated incidents and focuses on patterns, connections, and associations. For Diddy, this meant his defense team had to disprove not just a single accusation, but a web of interconnected allegations, all tied together by the prosecution's narrative. Each alleged action, whether trafficking, coercion, or misconduct, was painted as part of a larger, organized structure, a strategy that could easily sway a jury if presented effectively. Without Agnifilo, the team needed to regroup and address the broad, sweeping nature of the charges, a task requiring not only skill, but also a unified approach, something that might now be more challenging given the abrupt change in leadership within the team. As the days passed, media coverage intensified, zeroing in on every move the defense team made, every new piece of information, and every theory. Analysts began speculating on whether Agnifilo's departure was a symptom of internal discord. Was there a disagreement on how to handle the RICO charges? Did Agnifilo believe that the team was underestimating the complexity of the prosecution's case? Or, as some wondered, could it have been a strategic decision by the defense team, a way to bring in fresh tactics and redirect the case? There was no shortage of theories, but the lack of answers only fueled the intrigue surrounding the trial. Behind closed doors, Diddy's attorneys scrambled to keep pace. They pored over the prosecution's evidence, aware that every document, every witness statement, and every alleged connection mattered. The RICO charges broadened the scope of what they needed to address, pushing the defense to consider not only individual accusations, but the entire structure that the prosecution was trying to construct. The team needed to find holes in that structure, weaknesses in the prosecution's argument that could plant doubt in the minds of the jury. But doing so without Agnifilo's experience and insight presented a formidable challenge, especially as federal prosecutors wielded some of the most powerful legal tools available. The reality of RICO charges is that they often grant prosecutors an upper hand in court. Proving conspiracy alone can be enough to secure a conviction, making it imperative for Diddy's defense to dismantle the narrative of organized wrongdoing from every possible angle. This was no small feat. The RICO Act had been responsible for bringing down powerful figures across industries, from mob bosses to corrupt business executives. Now, it threatened to bring down a music icon, someone who had spent decades at the pinnacle of the entertainment world, but now stood on the verge of losing everything. The courtroom drama continued to escalate, with each new day bringing fresh details, arguments, and motions. The prosecution's case hinged on showing that Diddy had played a role in an organized network of activities, painting a picture of calculated wrongdoing that spanned years and involved multiple layers of alleged misconduct. To counter this, the defense would need to present Diddy as an individual, separate from the web of accusations woven by the prosecution. This required not only a skillful deconstruction of each charge, but also a compelling counter-narrative that could sway the jury's perception, casting doubt on the organized framework presented by the RICO allegations. Rivers, the legal analyst, highlighted how precarious Diddy's situation truly was. Federal cases, he explained, don't afford defendants the same chances as state cases might. There's no parole in the federal system. Following Mark Agnefilo's exit, the courtroom felt like it was on edge, as if everyone was waiting for something to explode. Agnifilo wasn't just any defense lawyer, he was the type who could command a room, who brought a sense of control even to cases that seemed impossible. His sudden departure wasn't just surprising, it was alarming. People inside the room could feel that the loss of such a heavyweight might throw the entire defense strategy into disarray. Diddy's remaining attorneys knew they were in trouble. Without Agnifilo, they were not just one lawyer short, they were missing a critical leader. He was the one who usually devised the strategies, identifying which arguments to push and which to leave alone. Now, the rest of the team looked slightly lost, almost as if they were waiting for Agnifilo to walk back through the doors. But he wasn't coming back, and everyone knew it. The other attorneys huddled around, whispering, trying to figure out their next move. They needed a new plan, and they needed it fast. The courtroom spectators, especially the journalists who had been following the case, immediately jumped on Agnefilo's exit as a major story. Speculation ran wild, with articles and TV segments all debating what had happened. Was it a rift within the defense team? Did Agnifilo discover some troubling evidence he didn't want to be part of? Or had he disagreed with Diddy or another team member over how to approach the case? Each theory seemed more dramatic than the last. The mystery of his departure became its own side story, adding layers of intrigue to an already high-profile case. What troubled people most was the timing. Lawyers sometimes stepped away from cases, but not like this. Not in the middle of court proceedings, with cameras and spectators watching their every move. Agnefilo's exit wasn't just a legal decision. It felt like a signal, as though something deeper was wrong. This wasn't just about the law anymore. It was about the pressure, the personalities, and the relentless public attention. The remaining attorneys were facing a real problem. They didn't have time to dwell on why Agnifilo had left. Their only choice was to keep going and figure out how to fill the gap. Yet, without him, it felt as if they were missing a key piece of the puzzle. Agnifilo was the one who had the reputation for handling the most difficult parts of a case, taking the riskier arguments, diving into the grittier details. Now, those duties would fall to the other attorneys, who were undoubtedly capable but hadn't expected to shoulder so much responsibility. In every high-stakes case, especially one as publicly scrutinized as Diddy's, every detail mattered. How the attorneys presented themselves, how they organized their arguments, even their body language, all of it could influence the perception of the jury and the public. Now, with Agnifilo gone, the defense team knew they needed to tread carefully. They had to avoid looking rattled, even though the exit of a key member had undoubtedly shaken them. The cameras would capture everything, and the world would see if they faltered. Agnefilo's reputation was one of resilience and skill, someone who could tackle the most controversial cases and navigate complex legal waters with ease. His experience ranged from racketeering to trafficking, even defending a figure as polarizing as Keith Raniere from NXIVM, where he had managed to maintain his composure in a case with accusations of trafficking and manipulation. Even though Raniere was convicted, Agnefilo's handling of the case had earned him respect and recognition. So why would he leave Diddy's case so suddenly? This question loomed over everyone, casting a shadow over the proceedings. Inside the courtroom, the mood among Diddy's team was tense. The other attorneys were doing their best to refocus, going over notes, strategizing, and trying to cover for Agnefilo's absence. They were determined not to let the departure derail their efforts, but it was impossible to ignore the fact that their defense now had a major hole. Agnifilo had been the person they counted on to argue the most intricate parts of the case. Without him, they were forced to take on roles they hadn't planned for, and everyone knew it wasn't going to be easy. Meanwhile, the media's focus shifted. Headlines about the case itself were now sharing space with stories about Agnifilo's exit. Journalists speculated that his departure might indicate a serious issue within Diddy's legal team. Some wondered if Agnifilo had clashed with the others over a specific legal point, while others suggested he had found the pressure of the high-profile case too intense, even for him. There was also a rumor that perhaps Diddy himself had insisted on a particular strategy that Agnifilo couldn't support. None of these theories had any real proof, but that didn't stop people from discussing them. Diddy, too, felt the impact of Agnifilo's departure. He knew he had hired Agnifilo for his expertise, someone who could stand strong under the intense pressure of a high-profile case. Now, Diddy was left to rely on a team that had suddenly lost its most seasoned player. He watched his remaining attorneys regroup, aware that the stakes had risen even higher. This wasn't just about winning or losing anymore. It was about proving they could still manage the case despite the disruption. Diddy's confidence in his defense team would be tested in ways he hadn't expected. As the days went on, the remaining attorneys worked tirelessly, staying late into the night, reviewing every piece of evidence, every potential argument. They knew they couldn't replace Agnifilo, but they also couldn't let his absence define their defense. They had to double down on their commitment, pushing forward despite the uncertainty and the media's relentless focus on their every move. The next hearing arrived, and as the attorneys walked into the courtroom without Agnifilo, there was a noticeable change. They held their heads high, determined to project an image of unity and strength, but there was a sense of urgency too, an understanding that the case had entered a new phase. The jury watched, the media watched, and the attorneys knew they had to deliver. Agnifilo's departure might have cast a shadow, but it also brought a new challenge, one that would test each attorney's skill, resilience, and ability to adapt. The defense team had been dealt an unexpected blow, but they were still in the fight, determined to prove that, even without their heavyweight leader, they could stand strong and make their case. The courtroom was watching, the world was watching, and they knew this was their moment to show they could handle whatever came their way.